Putting your apple trees to bed for the winter. That's this episode of Death by Bunjie. Again. Okay, whether you're growing apple trees for deer or whether you're doing it for feeding your family or any other reason, you know that it's important to maintain those trees. You know that it takes a lot of elbow grease, a lot of hard work to do that. Putting them to bed for the winter, winterizing those trees so that they stay healthy and enter the spring as healthy as possible is part of that process. You've got to go through, and there's a number of steps that I do the last few years that I've been growing these trees, and the more I read about it, the more I learn about this stuff and how important this is. So I'm going to share some of those tips with you in this episode. One of the first things you're going to want to do is go through and pick any remaining apples. Don't leave them on the tree over the winter. Some of the apple trees, some of the different species will hold their apples late into the fall, even into the early winter. Some of them just don't fall off. You want to go through and you make sure that you properly pick all those apples to get them off the trees. The next step that you're going to want to do is we've got to prepare a sort of a mulch bed around the roots. Now, the reason you want to do that, from what I've read, here in northeastern Pennsylvania, these trees, the soil here will freeze as deep as 3 feet down, so those roots can get frozen. To protect that, you don't want to allow too much of that to happen. You want to protect them somewhat. So over the spring and summer, of course, I've sprayed all the weeds to get rid of the weed bed around there to reduce the soil competition, the competition in the soil for nutrients and for moisture. All that's been sprayed, but now there's not necessarily bare dirt, but there is a lot of just thatch around those roots. There's no mulch built up to protect those roots. So what I like to do in the fall is prepare some sort of a mulch there. Now, I don't leave that stuff there during the summer anyway, because those spring rains, the summer rains, I don't want all that moisture sitting there. I don't necessarily leave that there. So if there's any additional mulch in the summer, I'll remove that in the spring so it's not sitting there all summer getting moldy and everything else. But come fall, come winter, we want some sort of a protection there. As the ground heats up during the day from the sunlight, you want to maintain some of that heat and put some sort of an insulating cover over the roots, over the soil, to make sure that the tree can maintain some of that heat, so that the soil can stay a little bit warm, protect those roots a little bit. The way to do that is put some sort of a mulch bed around there. Now, there's some commercial products you can buy for that. There's some mats that you can buy, that foam mats and insulating mats that work really, really well. If I was going to do it professionally, if I was going to grow a lot of apples, I'd probably be doing something like that. For my purposes, in the past, what I've done is almost exclusively used hay from the barn, hay that we keep in the rabbit pen, hay that we keep for the chickens. All of that gets piled into a little wagon that I keep in the barn, and periodically I'll come down and dump that either in the field to produce some, put the fertilizer out there and all that sort of thing, or else use it this time of year. We'll put it around here in a nice bed around these trees to use that. It serves the dual purpose of providing a nice insulating layer, but at the same time, it's going to provide the fertilizer is going to drip into the soil over the course of the winter. And over the course of the winter, as the snow and ice rots that hay down, any nutritious value left in that hay, any minerals or whatever, are going to make their way into the soil, and that's going to help the tree hopefully as well. This year I've got an added source for all that mulch, and I'm using basically a bunch of leaves that we took out of the driveway. Every year I've got to rake all these leaves. This year I was fortunate enough to use my stone rake. I bought a stone rake for the tractor, which worked really, really well. In one fell swoop, I raked all the leaves into a pile, shoveled them into this little dump wagon that I have, and I'll take this wagon now and go around tree to tree, and I'm going to build up that insulating layer with those leaves. Now, I've never done this before with leaves. Leaves aren't a product that I've used in the past, so I can't personally say that this is going to work or that it's even a good idea. I can just tell you that I did look on the internet, and a few other people have done it in the past. They like that for that purpose, so I am going to use it this way as well. It's better than letting the leaves go to waste, right? Okay, another thing you're going to want to do when you go through and get these trees ready for the winter is to protect the trunk, protect the top of the roots as they stick out of the ground from predators, from little critters that go around and chew on it. as the snow comes in, as all this grass and all the clover is no longer edible by the rabbits, they're going to look for something else to eat. And the first thing a rabbit's going to look for is nice, tasty apple tree bark. So to protect it from that, we're going to wrap each tree with one of these wrappers. Couple little tips on these wrappers. Number one, I take them off all summer long. I take them off in the spring when I come in here and start preparing the trees in the spring. I take these off for a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't want the moisture, the spider webs, all that other stuff, all the spider eggs and nests and stuff like that to stay up against the tree bark. I don't think that moisture is necessarily good for the bark. I want the tree to breathe. So I take these off, clean them up a little bit. The other reason I take them off is because, well, secondly, they're no longer needed. Once the grass greens up in the spring, those rabbits and everything else, they're going to go eat the grass instead of these trees. So they're kind of safe over the course of the summer. But the big reason you want to take these off in the spring is that they do not expand. Even though they're expandable, they don't expand as the tree grows. Your tree can actually grow through these things if you don't take them off. So you got to take them off and let the tree grow. Over the course of the summer, it's only going to grow over the summer. So I let it grow over the course of the summer. Then I put these back on in the fall this time of year. One other little tip about these guys, when you put them on, make sure you put them all the way down to where the tree, where the roots make contact with the soil. Get them right in there good, wrap it good, and start at the bottom, wrap them on the way up. If you do that, the rabbits won't be able to get their noses under there and work this up. They will do that if you're not careful. I have had it happen. I had them ring another tree, which I found out about this spring. And that tree made it through the year. It made it through the summer. It's still alive at the end of the year, so hopefully it's going to survive. But they ringed it pretty good. They ate the outside exterior of that bark off of there. I painted it good with pruning paint. And I think it's going to survive. The critters there, they don't like the pruning paint. They certainly aren't going to eat that. I'm sure that doesn't taste good. So you put that stuff on there and it should help protect a little bit too. But nevertheless, with this on there properly, it will prohibit those rabbits. They can get in these cages just fine, but you don't want them eating the product. You don't want them in there eating the tree. And when we're talking about critters, when we're talking about rabbits and moles and gophers and all those pests that can hurt your apple trees, an important thing to do, I think, is put some kind of poison out to get rid of the moles. This time of year, starting to get cold, days are getting shorter, all these animals are going to be getting in there. They're all going to be looking for a place to burrow and stay nice and warm for the winter and be all protected for the winter. They know it's coming. That's the downside of putting this little mulch system in there, piling that full with mulch, because that heats up the ground a little bit. It does attract rodents to live there. They will burrow under that mulch and create little channels. Especially the moles, they will eat the roots. Anything that burrows under the soil, they'll eat the roots during the winter. They'll just stay underground, eat the roots right off your tree, and then in the spring, the tree will die because there's no roots left to support the tree. To keep that from happening, on each tree I go through and sprinkle some of it's just a mole and gopher killer. I sprinkle a little bit of that around the tree, and then I put the mulch bed on top of it. It is a problem for me down here in this orchard. Last year I lost an apricot tree, and it was obvious to me that the reason I lost it was because animals burrowed next to it all winter long and ate all the roots off the apricot trees. From what I've read, apricots are, or apricots, depending on how you pronounce it, those trees are especially susceptible to rodents eating their roots. For some reason, those stone fruits, I guess they are, the rodents really like eating that kind of root. They like eating that stuff. Not so much the apples, but I do have an apple tree that over the late summer, now that I'm coming in here and inspecting them, I have a little lodi tree here on the corner where something's been burrowing all around it and eating it. So I'm going to put a little extra of this stuff in the holes there around that tree, see if I can kill whatever is in there. I will go so far as to trap if I have to. I'll put mouse traps out there, get some good sized mouse traps, bait them, and see if I can trap whatever is in that little cage. I'll put them in there as well, and hopefully trap whatever's in there before the snow flies, before they hole up for the winter. Okay, here's what it looks like, the finished product. They are all dressed up in their winter garb, you might say. I'm pretty excited about that, pretty happy with that. The next video I do on apple trees, this is a good time to go through and decide what died. I got a couple that died. Those trees will be replaced, and I'll be ordering in January or February, probably January. So make sure you subscribe to Death by Bunjie so that I can show you where I order, how I decide what to buy, in case that helps you in any way, in case you find that kind of stuff interesting. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Like the Facebook page, because I'll be posting information there too. And don't forget that with the winter coming on, that means we've got winter pruning to do as well. So I'll be doing a video on that, probably not until March. But if you're interested in this stuff, please subscribe to Death by Bunjie. And I'll see you next time on Death by Bunjie.